Welcome back to the Imaginary Gallery. I've got a guest here named Hero. He's a good boy. Tonight we'll be continuing on our crime spree. Sweet baby. In this video I'll be covering two sections referencing Dr. Hare, Without Conscience, The Disturbing World of the Psychopaths Among Us. The first one, sexual violence. The second, the psychopath as a wife beater. Sexual violence. He tells us that rape provides a great example of the callous, selfish, and instrumental use of violence by these psychopath creatures. Not all rapists are psychopaths, of course. Some rapists clearly are very disturbed individuals who are suffering from a variety of psychiatric and psychological problems. Others are the products of cultural and social attitudes that reduce women to subservient roles. The offenses of these men, although repugnant to society and horrifically traumatic for the victims, may be more understandable than are those committed by the psychopaths. Perhaps 50% of the serial rapists, or repeat rapists, are psychopaths. Their acts are the result of a potent mixture, which includes uninhibited expression of sexual drives and fantasies, desire for power and control, and perception of the victims as objects of pleasure or satisfaction. This mixture, he tells us, is well illustrated by John Ogden, called the Paper Bag Rapist by the Vancouver Press. He wore a paper bag over his head when he raped children and ladies. Ogden was diagnosed by a court psychiatrist as both a psychopath, lacks a conscience, is manipulative, egocentric, untruthful, and lacks the capacity for love, and a sexual sadist who gets sexual excitement by inflicting psychological pressure on its victims. The psychopath as a wife batterer. Dr. Hare says that in recent years public awareness and intolerance of domestic violence have increased dramatically, resulting in aggressive prosecution and court-mandated treatment of offenders. Although the causes and the dynamics of wife battering are complex and involve myriad economic, psychological, and social factors, there's some evidence that psychopaths constitute a very large proportion of persistent batterers. In a recent study, Hare and his people administered the psychopathy checklist to a sample of men taking part either voluntarily or as part of a sentence in a treatment program for wife abusers. They found that 25% of the men in this sample were psychopaths, which is very similar to the percentage of those psychopaths that are found in prison populations. They didn't know the percentage of psychopathic wife assaulters who do not enter treatment programs, but he suspects that it is at least as high. The suggestion that many of the men who continually beat their wives are psychopaths has serious ramifications for treatment programs. That's because the behavior of the psychopath is notoriously resistant to change. The resources available to run programs for assaulted husbands usually are very limited, and many treatment programs have very long waiting lists. Psychopaths, more than other men, are likely to attend these programs simply to appease the court rather than to try to change their behavior, which we know doesn't change. It just gets disguised in different ways, and they may do little more than occupy a seat that would better be used by somebody else. Furthermore, psychopaths undoubtedly have disrupting effects on these types of programs. But perhaps the most disturbing consequence of sending a psychopath into such a therapy situation is the false sense of security it can engender in the assaulter's spouse. Quote,
"He's been treated. He should be a lot better now,"
she might conclude, thus missing the chance to end this dead-end abusive relationship. Next, he's got a section in the gray box that states Mr. LeBlanc was convicted of assaulting his common law wife and ordered by the court to attend a treatment group for assaultive husbands. He was charming, he was amiable, and yes, even unfortunate. He described the assault as a very minor thing. Minimization. and he says it was just a matter where he struck out in anger during an argument with his wife. But the police report told a different story. It stated that he had blackened both of her eyes and broken her nose, and that this assault was only the latest in a string of similar episodes involving several other ladies. In an interview before the start of his first treatment session, he stated that he understood the problem and that all he needed to do was to learn some anger management skills. He then proceeded to describe, in a pontificating way, the psychological dynamics and theories associated with family violence. And he concluded that it was unlikely that the group could offer him very much. However, he was willing to attend the sessions because he could help the other men gain some insight into their problems. During the first section, he casually commented that he had been a paratrooper in Vietnam, received an MBA from Columbia University, and had started several successful business enterprises. The details were sketchy. He said that his current offense was his very first offense. Don't they always? And when the group leader pointed out that he'd also received convictions for fraud, theft, and embezzlement, he smiled, like they do, and he just said that,
Oh, those were the result of some kind of petty misunderstandings.
He dominated the group discussions and spent most of his efforts in rather superficial pop psychology analyses of the other men. The group leader found him to be interesting, but most of the others were usually frustrated by his intellectual arrogance and his aggressive manner. After a few sessions, he dropped out of the group and supposedly left the city in a clear violation of the court order that was written against him. His claims to be a graduate of Columbia University and to have served in Vietnam proved to be lies.
I am the Narcopath, and I'm the only one for you.
Since I'm giving confessions, I might as well tell you that when we first dated, my life was a mess. My driver's license was suspended even though I drove miles to see you every day. The reason I did that was because I wanted to check up on you. I wanted to make sure you had no other chicks in your presence. As far as risk-taking, well, I guess I'm a risk-taker because I took plenty of risks. I didn't care if I got stopped by police. I felt like I wasn't going to live much longer anyway. You were just an experiment. It's not my fault you figured me out too soon. We could have lasted for quite a while. You knew that I was destitute. You knew that my life was a big mess. And I was all talking love for you. Ha! And you asked so many questions, how I could want to be in love so quickly, and you kept talking about how we just met. It's like, I know I'm in love. I know. You thought it was a bit too quick. I don't know a thing about love, so I guess maybe it was. But the point was, I knew that you had money, and you could take care of my needs. But if I got arrested, which I wouldn't, but if I did by chance, by accident, I knew I'd have you to fall back on. Otherwise, there'd be no one. Didn't matter that I was using you and had 2 other boyfriends behind your back, and I told them that you were just a friend. All I cared about was my well-being, not yours. So that's why you caught me with those boys and saw my lipstick on their neck. I made up a story back then, but now you might as well know. Yes, I went down on every single one of them because I am loose, and I love it. Ugh.
And yes, I'm quite aware that I had told you that my private parts were reserved for you, and for you only.
And I had lots of explaining to do when I turned up with chlamydia.
And you didn't even have it. That was humiliating, if there's such a thing for the narcopath.
I just got pissed off and blamed you anyway. There's no way I could catch it because I've been with no one else. It must have been at the tanning bed. It must have been on the doorknob or the toilet seat. You gave it to me. You must have somehow cured it beforehand, I said. The truth is,
I was with all kinds of guys behind your back. Every night that you weren't with me, I was with at least 2 or 3, sometimes 5. So, there you go. That's where the chlamydia came from. I know you wondered all this time. Well, there you go.
And you had expressed how you thought it was premature that I try to get our families together after our second date. Honey, I had to move in quick. I knew that your family was more affluent than mine, so I figured I was going to impress them. I wore the lowest cut shirt I could think of to impress your daddy. And I flattered your mama, told her how pretty her hair was. I could tell she spent hours on it, even though it was disgusting. But I told her it was the most beautiful hairdo I'd ever seen, and that won her over. The idea was for me to win over your parents with all my flattering comments. So then, if by chance you figured me out anytime soon, I'd have them on my side. And I would call them in tears. Notice how I got their phone numbers and became their Facebook friends because I needed them. If you figured me out and you started calling me a liar, I would contact them and say, "Oh, your son is terrible. He's calling me a liar. I've never lied to him ever. Please talk to him." And they, of course, would do it for me. They were my flying monkeys. Of course, I brought them gifts and I flattered them more, so it made it that much more difficult for them to take your side when you tried to tell them how horrible I was. They told you to get over it, that you're just being too sensitive, and that's because I programmed that into their minds, and it was true. Kind of. Actually, no, it wasn't. Now that I'm giving confessions, I can tell you that.